She worked really hard just to keep me in food, clothes, and shelter, and she worked harder still so that I could have toys and books and games and adventures and enriching life experiences. My mom was resourceful and passionately devoted to helping me have a good life. She worked hard to find ways to get my eyes to light up with wonder. My mom pored over the New York Times review of children's books to find the best children's books in the world for me, and haunted used bookstores until they turned up. They would appear at Christmas time or on my birthday or in my Easter basket. My mom knew her way around the bookstore. She'd hunt all year for the kinds of things I would want for Christmas and hide them in the house until the appointed time when I would be dazzled by all the presents under the tree. We would go on adventures up and down the East Coast with my godfather in his beloved little pop-up camper, and we would frolic on beaches and ride bikes and go to historical sites and tiny little islands and car shows and jazz festivals and book shows and flea markets and fairs. We'd roll into a campground and Mom would set up a picnic area with a little red and white checked tablecloth, and we would grill up a London broil or some other inexpensive cut of meat, and Mom would calculate on her fingers how little money had been expended for an experience so fine. We'd find a coupon and take skiing lessons together, or we'd take ice skates to a frozen lake or sleds to the hill. Mom took me to Washington, D.C. over and over again, trying to get me to all of the Smithsonian museums. She took me to the Philadelphia Museum of Art every time a major African-American artist was featured. We would go to the Mann Music Center and spread a picnic blanket on the lawn and listen to Itzhak Perlman and Radio Ron and other geniuses of classical music, Afro-Latino music, and of jazz. Depending on how old I was, I might turn cartwheels or nap or dance, but Mom wanted me to be cultured and enriched, to be exposed to knowledge and possibility and fun. We would go to New York City at Christmas time to look at all of the brightly decorated shop windows on Fifth Avenue and to play with toys at F.A. Schwartz. We would go to boat shows in Annapolis, Maryland every year, wandering in